Hi everybody, welcome. In today's quick tips, we're going to be talking about the wonderful Silk Floss Tree and how you can consider her for your garden. So, you ready to dig in? Let's grow.
All right, let's get acquainted with this superstar. The silk floss tree goes by the botanical name Cebia speciosa, but you might also see her under the older name Corycia speciosa. And you know me, the botanists have a field day with changing names and it drives us landscape architects bananas. But again, her official botanical name is Cebia speciosa. And what makes this tree so special is the obvious thing that you don't see every day is these fantastic flowers that are just spectacular, and that she also produces these flowers in the fall. She typically flowers from September through November. It's quite spectacular, as you can see. The entire canopy of the tree will explode in this huge display of these flowers, and they look like a cross between an orchid and a hibiscus to me. Very breathtaking. The colors are stunning. They're vibrant pink with like some deep magentas and sometimes a little bit of creamy white or yellow. So unique. I had several of these in my other home, and I also had a white, which is kind of rare, but it's such a cool tree, and it's a showstopper when she flowers. I can't say that enough. It's just something that's going to catch everyone's eyes. Another cool feature of the silk floss tree is her trunk. She'll have these incredibly spiny thorns that wrap around the tree as she grows, and they kind of look like rhinoceros horns to me. And you do need to be careful where you plant her so people don't bonk into it. But if you have her in a nice space with some shrubs underneath, it can be quite striking to see. It's beautiful actually to me. And a fun fact for you all is that younger trees will typically have a vibrant green color to their trunk. That's because the bark is full of chlorophyll and will actually photosynthesize, helping the tree produce energy. But as she grows, she turns more to a silvery gray, and sometimes the thorns will fall off on their own, or you can knock them off if you're concerned about safety and people getting poked. They don't tend to grow back, so they'll actually have a very smooth bark. The tree will have a very smooth bark if you decide to get rid of the thorns. Because the silk floss grows quite large, it can grow to 40 to 60 feet tall and almost as wide. You need to give her plenty of space. It's not a tree for a small yard or a tight parkway strip. Another thing you do need to know, I want to mention, is that when the flowers drop, you just got to be careful to pull them off the sidewalk because they can get a little slippery when it gets wet. Now let's talk a little bit about garden uses. As a landscape architect, I like to use her as a specimen tree because this is a quite large tree. She's not something you want to place close to a home. So her primary use is going to be a focal point. So I would plant her in the middle of a large front lawn or in a prominent spot in the backyard visible from your windows or patio. Now let's talk about growing and care. The silk floss tree needs to grow in hardiness zones 9 to 11, maybe protected 8B if it's near the coast. I've seen some grow north of Tampa, but it's definitely on the coastal side, so you have to be careful because while she can handle a light freeze, while she can handle a light frost, she can't handle a hard freeze. The silk floss tree is a pretty resilient tree when she gets established. She's going to do pretty well during storms. Ours did very well during past hurricanes. So it's not a guarantee, but this tree tends to be very well rooted, and again, basically makes a perfect candidate for central South Florida and even some coastal areas of the Gulf states and parts of California and Arizona. Now let's talk a little bit about sunlight. This tree demands full direct sun. The more you give her, the more she's going to flower, the more she's going to grow and get very robust. So 6 to 8 hours of bright sunlight is ideal. And if you give her plenty of sunlight, she's going to grow quite fast. I've seen her to grow several feet in a summer, so this is not a tree that grows slowly. So that's cool. You're going to get a tree after a few years, she's going to flower. She doesn't tend to flower right away. Just give her a few years, and then she starts popping out these blooms in the fall. On soil, the most important factor to consider is the drainage. Silk floss are adapted to a wide variety of soils, but they do not like soggy, wet feet. So you want to give her more of a sandy to a loamy soil. When you go to plant her, make sure you plant her in an area that tends to be a little bit higher in your yard. You don't want to plant her in a low spot if possible. And you also want to make sure that it drains well. You want to make sure that the water drains away from the tree. On watering, the tree is very, very drought tolerant when she gets established. So that's another great thing about the silk floss tree, is that she's very resilient in that way. She can handle droughts quite easily, but it's only after she gets established. And so what I like to do, it's critical during the first 3 months, I have found. So we like to do an aftercare watering once you first plant her. So we recommend this watering schedule for the first 3 months. The first month, water 3 times a week. The second month, water 2 times a week. And the third month, water 1 time a week. And then after that, you just want to water as needed. You can run your irrigation system if you have an automatic one, but you just want to be mindful that you don't have too much water on the tree, but you also want to make sure you provide enough until she gets her roots down there and she can find that water table. On fertilizer, this tree is not a particularly heavy feeder, but to encourage strong growth and flowering, you can consider like an organic, I like Dr. Earth Flower Girl, which is a 394. And it's organic and it has some great beneficials in there, and that's a great slow release organic fertilizer. You could also use a 10-10-10 or an 8-10-10, but one thing you do want to make sure is that you want to look for blackout periods where some municipalities don't want you to fertilize during heavy rainy seasons, because you don't want that fertilizer to leach out into the water tables or into water bodies. And on tree care, I'd like to mention that as the tree grows, you want to look for any cross branching and trim those away, because when branches rub up against themselves, that can be a weak point over time and the branches can snap and fall. So now that we talked about all that, I want to go over a few more fun facts for you. This tree has a great wildlife value. Her flowers are rich in nectar, so she's going to attract lots of pollinators and hummingbirds. So there you have it. The silk floss is a true giant of the plant world. Fast-growing, tough, incredibly beautiful tree that brings this burst of tropical color in the autumn when we tend to not have those flowers around. And its cool, thorny trunk is definitely a conversation piece. It's a great tree to consider for your garden, as long as you, again, have the room for her.
We hope you found this information helpful, but if you have any thoughts or questions, just leave them down below and we'll make sure we get back to you. And until the next video, bye. Please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And tell your friends and family. We post videos weekly. Thanks.